Um, we have a set of programs this month and next month that gets into our community quite a bit. And so we are honored to have the program that we have today. But I won't say anything further. I'm going to turn this over to Sarah Caitlin, one of our vice presidents for programming. And Sarah will be introducing our speaker and handling a question and answer session afterwards. Sarah, take it away.
Yeah, I'll second what David said. We are just so pleased to have you here with us today.
Oh, thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Jane Williams is best known for co-founding and leading Love Columbia, a local nonprofit that has served families in need in our community since 2008. Love Columbia provides a range of life skills coaching and practical services that promote financial, housing, and career advancement. And that work has included establishing and operating the Love Seat Furniture Bank and Resale Store, launching Love Coffee. I know a lot of you have probably been there. And both of those serve the community by providing supportive employment opportunities for the people that they serve. Her previous social work career included hospital social work, foster care, and leading several local social justice and relief efforts. She's been honored many times for her work, but is quick to say that none of it would have been possible without the generosity of others who have given their time, talent, and resources to support her various endeavors. She's particularly grateful for her family and the many volunteers who ensured she was able to continue the work she loves after losing her eyesight in 2013. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jane, and you just let us know if there's anything you need, Jane.
Okay, well, if I'm not quite looking at you, you just wonder why.
You're doing great.
And I'm sure you all look amazing today. Never looked better. So one thing about losing your sight, you just have beautiful pictures in your head of all the people you meet. So anyway, that's good. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the work you do. We need to have so much societal change and improvement, don't we? And although I've worked mainly with direct services, the times that we've been in have just gotten me more involved in policy change and advocacy. And so I'm just so grateful for what you do, and just that you give your hearts and your time to making our world a better place. So thank you, thank you. Love Columbia got started in 2008. Really, I'd heard of the idea through another organization, Love Inc., that had 135 affiliates. I was looking for a platform, a way to organize volunteers and churches. What I kept running into in my social work career was so many people who wanted to help and so many people who needed help. And so I felt like, how can we build some kind of scaffolding that can really just make that happen? And actually, in my office here, I should have had them hold it up, but I have a little fake street sign that's the intersection of needs and resources. So just a quick story. I had this idea. It wasn't going anywhere. I could see back when this was in my head, and I was carrying brochures about this clearinghouse where people from the community in need would call, and we'd triage and then get others to respond and just organize. You know, this group could do food, or this group could do transportation, or this group could work with this population, and just various things to try to promote upward mobility, realizing that what people really need is other people. They need relationships. And so never wanting to just, in a sense, hand out something without having a person connected as well. I grew up reading a lot of Ruby Payne, her framework for mobilizing people out of poverty, and just really also Raj Chetty, Harvard economist who talks a lot about social capital, and just feeling like making those connections between people so you can just offer what you have in terms of knowledge, connections, encouragement. That's what's really going to make a difference. So how do we do that? Well, we got our start, as some of you may know, just with a pilot that happened to be the 500 plus evacuees that came here from Hurricane Katrina. So we had a disaster recovery center. Peggy Kirkpatrick was director of the food bank at the time. Steve Hollis, others. We coordinated at Parkade Plaza. And one day, literally, a woman who was, I think, 8 months pregnant, still wearing these clothes, she'd come through the floodwaters, literally ran into a volunteer who was carrying a stack of maternity clothes in her size. And we kind of all gasped when we thought this is the intersection of needs and resources. So that's kind of what was birthed in my head. And since then, I think one of the things that brings me the most joy is when we have these coincidences here at Love Columbia. Somebody's on the phone in one office and someone has a need and somebody walks in a door, literally, that they either are dropping off the keys to a car they're donating or saying, hey, I know how to create resumes or whatever it is. And then we're able to match those things up. And sometimes it's as shocking as one day I told our staff at a staff meeting that I think, it would be really great to help people who are just really suffering from just the whole sense of hopelessness or just trauma, and just needing to add some opportunities for creating or just pausing in beauty, just to get just in a different mind frame. And I said, we should get some of those adult coloring books and have them here. So if people just need to make something pretty or just stop and just do something like that. The next day, a gentleman walked in and said, I've got, I think it was 15 boxes of 95 adult coloring books. Would you like to have them? So just silly things like that happen, but big things happen, like we'd like to provide more transitional housing, and then we're donated $1 million. So from the little to the big, we've just seen the community come around needs that we've been able to identify. So at Love Columbia, we have the 3 big buckets. It's helping people with their finance, their career, and their housing. It's all intertwined. We like to get to know each person, listen to their story, and try to find out how do we help them achieve their goals, try to help them understand, just what are the small steps they can take to get where they'd like to be. So we have a program called Path Forward where we get the big, long story that people have. We used to have everybody go through that and set goals and action plan. We got so big and so many people want our help that some people maybe don't need the whole thing. So they'll just go straight to one of our coaching programs, which is helping somebody find a job, a better job, helping someone understand how to manage their money, build their credit, helping someone get into rental property or rental for the first time, or buy a home. And so transportation got thrown in there somewhere along the line because you can't get to work, you can't pay your rent, you can't keep housed. We've steadily just grown the number of people that we've helped. Last year, we enrolled 2,898. I just got the number today. Unique adults in our programs, and there were about that many kids in their households because well over half the people we serve are heads of households with children. So we provided over 4,000 coaching sessions last year in the various ways. We also do emergency housing when we can. We'd like to do more. We provided over 4,000 nights of hotel stays and 1,700 nights in transitional housing. What we've seen through our history is we've just needed to change with the times. In 2008, when we opened our doors just before the economy tanked, we realized that there was double-digit unemployment, and we needed to really focus on helping people find jobs. So we did a lot of that work, also our financial coaching that we did. People weren't really talking about credit scores much. We didn't even have a credit building per se program, just the budgeting and helping people learn how to save and get out of debt. Then, of course, we started realizing as we're getting into that at one point, a third of the people applying for our more intensive money management program had a payday loan. So we worked with it was actually one of our coaches. And last year we enrolled 104 people in our 16-week, we call it Weight Watchers for Your Money, extra mile coaching. And all of those participants are matched with a community volunteer. One of those volunteers back in 2017 was Candy Richardson, who was the assistant to Joe Miller at First State Community Bank. And she could not get her financial coaching participants' budget to balance because of this 460% interest she was paying on payday loans. So Candy marched into Joe's office and said, "We got to pay off this lady's loan." Well, he ended up calling some bankers together and they chipped in under not a little pressure, I would say, from Joe. But we started a payday loan relief fund. Last year, we did, I think, over 50 of those loans and have continued to do a number of those loans. We have a 95% repayment rate, which is crazy because people are so grateful to get out of that predatory lending. So that was something, just again, picking up the phone, enrolling people in programs, listening to what their issues are, and then trying to create a program that fits. It wasn't until 2013 that we started doing a little bit of housing coaching, because honestly, people could find housing back then, believe it or not. In 2015, we started getting families with kids, more than 2 or 3 kids, that couldn't find anywhere to go if they were unhoused, if they'd become homeless. The wonderful Salvation Army Harbor House has 5 or 6, depending on the plumbing working, family rooms with 2 bunk beds. Well, that doesn't really work for a large family, and certainly that's not enough to cover the need in Columbia. So a church loaned us a house and then thought it was so successful. Another one during the pandemic, we were up to 7 transitional houses where a family could stay up to around 6 months to reset their lives, not paying utilities or rent, getting weekly coaching, and then being able to transition into their own permanent housing. That program has been so successful. Over 70 families have gone through, probably over 80 now. And it's just amazing to see. Just today, a woman who's moving into, we have 3 houses now. Some were loaned to us. We actually own 3, and we have broken ground on a 10-plex at the corner of Ash and College, thanks to city and county ARPA money and the Crossing Church big offering. We will have that finished this fall so that we will have 12 units right here on our property for families experiencing homelessness, families with kids, to try to reset their lives. So super excited. A woman just came in today. She wanted to shake my hand. She's getting to move into one of our houses. She was crying. There's really nothing more traumatic than being homeless with children. Renita Norwood from Columbia Public Schools tells us it's the leading transiency, this type of situation. She works with the homeless families, certainly impacts academic performance. And last year, Columbia Public School identified over 500 students that were experiencing homelessness. So it's a difficult time for families, and we really want to be there for them. This year, we helped about 450 unhoused households find housing. I think about 180 to 90 of those were literally homeless. Others were bunked up with other people. We prevented over 500 evictions just by helping people stay housed, helping them pay back rent, negotiating late fees with landlords, negotiating withdrawal of eviction proceedings. So many families now are struggling because rents have gone up so much. Rents have gone up about 25% in the last 5 years. Columbia continues to see them go up even when other areas are cooling, because we just haven't kept up with building more housing. Very low rental vacancy. 27% of Boone County renters pay more than 50% of their income on rent. So you can see those are the folks that something happens, the car breaks down, they miss work, there's an unexpected, expense of some type, you get behind, but where the rent might have been $800 a few years ago, in a lot of cases, especially for these larger families, the average 3-bedroom is over $1,300 a month. So it's pretty easy to get behind in your rent. A lot of what we do then is just, again, financial coaching, career coaching to help people catch up. We also provide furniture for people through our furniture bank. Just shy of 200 families got whole households of furniture. So go shop at the Love Seat, because when you buy something out there, you're putting gas in the trucks and helping us provide that free furniture, housewares, boxes of housewares. We also moved about 40 people with Love Seat trucks, because if you can't move your belongings, we're going to have to replace them if you don't have any, but it's just people don't have the ability to move their belongings either. We let people shop in the store to get things. Probably close to 150 families are a little more shopped in the store. So that whole entity, the Love Seat, has been a real joy to us. When we started Love Columbia, on the heels of Hurricane Katrina, and I canvassed the community what they wanted us to do. The two things that bubbled to the top were, could you start that furniture bank that we had during Hurricane Katrina, and could you just pay people's rent and utilities? Well, with the furniture bank, I'll tell you, it was a whole lot easier to start than paying everybody's rent and utilities. And that goes back to, if we pay your bill this month, how will you pay it next month? And what can we do to help ensure that you are able to pay again next month if you can't pay this month? So I'm blanking. We do car repairs. Veterans United started helping us fund a Get to Work fund a few years ago, and then other donors have chipped in to do car repairs. We typically do about 250 car repairs a year. Again, it's for low-income workers so they can keep their jobs, get to their jobs. With the price of used cars going up so much, we have been really working hard to help people save for a car. We'd like to get the better bus system around here so that everybody doesn't need a car, but at this point, you can't get to most jobs and get to shift work or weekend work, unless you have a car. So we help people create savings accounts to save for a car. We match $1,000 savings with $500, and we'll provide $1,000 no interest loan. So the two types of loans that we provide here are zero interest loans to repay a high interest payday loan, and then a zero interest loan if you're in our financial coaching to buy a car. We haven't had quite as good of repayment rate with the car loans, because you weren't getting out of some kind of debt and just it's a little bit different situation. We try tons of new things here. Some of them are great ideas. Some of them turn out to be, we've got to tweak that. We've got to do, something a little different. But we have tried to provide more support for families with kids through the years. I think you got our brochure. I might want to stop talking because I feel like I've talked and you probably have questions, and then that will lead me to tell you something else.
Great. Sarah back here. Kathy Jensen said she loved that story about maternity clothes. David Robinson wanted to let you know that we record all of our meetings and we post them up on our webpage. So if you want to share that with someone, you can, and a lot of our members that are busy during the lunch hour will come later and watch the recording. Alice Turner asks, she says, wonderful work. And she asks, how do you interface with Room at the Top? I think she might need Room at the Inn and other similar wonderful programs.
Yes, well, it used to be the happiest day of Love Columbia was when Room at the Inn opened in December, and the saddest day was when it closed, in the spring.
Yep.
We were over the moon when Room at the Inn started keeping its doors open all year long. So we interface a lot with the staff and people there. Um, uh, because we want to help people have permanent housing. So a lot of the folks that stay there, then end up over here. Also the same with Turning Point. So we do work pretty closely with them. John Trapp is amazing. He doesn't, his preference is to send all families with kids here. Just certain situations where Room at the Inn's not, the best fit. But he is amazing. They're quite a group over there, and we love them dearly.
Feel free, folks, to raise your hands and I can call on you, or you can keep putting questions in the chat. Someone else asked the $1 million donation that you mentioned that came in right at the right moment for the transitional housing. Was that ARPA funds or just
Well,
lucky gift?
we've gotten a couple of $1 million donations. One was from Veterans United when we bought this downtown building. I don't know if anybody knew our old location was 4,200 square feet in a split foyer type of building across from Cosmo Park. So it was quite a step up to move into the old Boone County Family Resources building. It really allowed us to really explode and engage a lot more volunteers. We engage about 400 volunteers a year. So the $1 million first one was amazing through Veterans United. And then with the 10-plex, it started out as a 6-plex and $600,000 in city ARPA, $1 million in Boone County ARPA funds for that. And then the Crossing Church took up an Easter offering. And they've typically done that in the past few, it's been, I think they retired utility assistants, they paid off medical debt. They've had some pretty big offerings there to do something benevolent. But it's usually been in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. So they said they wanted to do something to help with transitional housing. They had actually, one of their members had loaned us a couple of condos during the pandemic, and their church members had helped kind of support and sponsor families that were living there. So they were, of course, familiar with the program. And we had this amazing video that of a man named Robert Reed, and I can send that out, or it's on our website. He was quite a story of, we met him when he was staying with his son at the Welcome Inn, and partly in his car, partly at the Welcome Inn when they could have money for the hotel. He entered into our transitional housing program. We were able to help him get his CDL. He became a driver for solid waste. He's now a supervisor there. And he went through our financial management program, this extra mile program, and it just changed his life. And so he gave a video story, and we said it's that $1 million story because they raised $1 million from that offering, and we were able then to expand our plans. It was amazing timing because we had the plans at the architects, and had it come in even just a few weeks later, things would have been more sealed into a 6-plex. So it's a 10-plex now. We're super excited.
Awesome. We've got a couple people with their hands up, either Sue or Herb Tillema. You've had your hand up the longest. You want to unmute? They're pointing at each other. It's like, make sure you unmute, Sue. I don't think we can hear you. There we go. Here she comes.
What I was going to say is I haven't gone to Love Coffee real often, but I have observed conversations with the supervisor and some of the people that you're trying to help there. And this one girl was cooking, and she likes her job a whole lot. It was obvious. But this person was saying, it's time for you to get out and go on to someplace else. But she still lived at home, and this was on the bus route and all that, and she loved it. And obviously what you were doing is building up self-confidence too. And I was just going to compliment on how you're doing that. Now, do you still make things for the Tiger Hotel or the Glens? I know when you were in there, you were doing some breads or something, I think, for the Glens. Is that still happening?
Well, actually, we launched Love Coffee 2 weeks before the pandemic. What a great time to start a new coffee shop,
Right.
providing support employment. So the fact that Love Coffee survived was just, again, the generosity of the community who did so much catering business through it. But by the fall of 2021, Love Coffee was pretty well standing on its own. And so we actually launched them as their own separate nonprofit. It became a little confusing to people. When we got the $1 million from VU, people were going in there and, well, I guess you all have plenty of money. Well, they really didn't, because it was a completely separate program. So we felt like just mutually, they had their own board from the beginning, that it was just in the best interest. So they're actually a completely separate entity. They are working to become more connected to some of the organizations that provide services for people with intellectual disabilities. And so I'm excited about some of the future there. But they tried their first little outpost at the Tiger Hotel. That didn't turn out to be too lucrative, but the Columbia Orthopedic Group allowed them to build a kiosk there. Then there was the Columbia Post Acute had an empty coffee shop space no one was using, and the new Thompson Center is building a spot. So those entities, it just the healthcare relation, the of course, people with just varying abilities. It's just super exciting how they are going to be out there doing more in those spaces. I mean, I obviously really care about people with disabilities keeping their job. So when Chuck Cruz, who was a longtime Special Olympics coach, came to me, his wife had just passed away and he had some money he wanted to invest. We jumped right on board. But at about the time we moved downtown, the housing crisis came on. We just decided that they might do well working it in their own space, and then we would as well. So we cut the apron string, so to speak, and so far so good. We still do supported employment out at the Love Seat. That was in the little bio I wrote. When we started the Love Seat, back when nobody could get jobs in 2008, we had an agreement with the Department of Corrections that we were actually providing jobs in 2010 through 12 for people that just came out of prison. Then, of course, that money kind of dried up, and we just kept on doing it on our own, was just providing jobs for people. What we find is a lot of people really need a recovery-friendly workplace where they can be assured that there's nobody going to be using drugs, or alcohol behind or after work. And then we also try to provide flexible hours for working parents, single parents. So it's worked out really well for us to do that. But we're so glad that Love Coffee has continued on and is still making it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely.
Al or Mary Jo, one of the two of you have got a question.
Actually, I want to start with a question that Dave Mallory asked in the chat. So maybe we could address that first.
I think
About the
she just
relationship
answered
between
it.
Love Inc. and Love Coffee.
Yeah, I thought she had just answered this. She said, David Mallory asks, someone told me that Love Coffee and Love Columbia, which was originally Love Inc., had nothing to do with each other. And he asks, is Love Coffee affiliated with Love Columbia, or is their only connection that you helped found both? And I thought you just said the coffee shop used to be a program of yours, but recently you cut the apron strings and they have now gotten their own nonprofit.
Right. That was in the
license.
fall of 2021. Right. So they opened in February of 2020, and then they became their own separate entity. And it was fall of 2021.
Let me take it a step further back then. The relationship between Love Inc. and Love Columbia.
Yes.
And in particular, Love Inc. had a religious component at times where clients were asked to participate in religious programming. And does Love Columbia have the same philosophy?
You know, Love Columbia, it was Love Inc., actually Love in the Name of Christ. It was a national organization that was mostly volunteer and church-based. We I don't know that we would ever have said we ever had any kind of religious requirement here, even when we were under that name. But certainly we don't at this point. Now, we may in our discussion with you when you come, and we're just asking how can we help you? Some people may want help just connecting to a spiritual mentor, but that could be Christian or non-Christian. So it's not like we don't discuss spiritual things, because one of our mottos here is serve the whole person and engage the whole community. But we would like to say at this point, a lot of our values really are very much Christian values, loving your neighbor as yourself. You know, just try to selflessly serve people and value everyone as made in the image of God. So I think those things haven't changed, but we don't have any spiritual programming per se. Our programming is really more life skills oriented, again, helping people with finance, career, and employment. Now, many of the people that volunteer here may have a religious affiliation, and they may at some point, as they're interacting with someone, share that, but we don't officially have any spiritual programming here. Does that answer your question?
Jane, it's actually my question. I had a client a number of years ago who felt like they were kind of pushed into, hearing a little bit of rhetoric on religion and on Christianity. And I just wondered about that. It sounds like that may have been a volunteer who just had such strong belief systems that they were.
And that's probably what happened. And we do feel very strongly about engaging community volunteers, and we do try to provide volunteer training for our volunteers, not to push their values on others.
I share that.
Yeah.
I share that belief with you. So I wanted to ask about it because I was always hesitant, even though you do excellent work. That I didn't want.
And certainly we would want someone to share that with us so we could, correct that. I think what we're really trying to do is provide an atmosphere here of just love and encouragement, because so many people are just trying their best and they feel so discouraged and just need some kind of hope. And so we do talk about that, and I can't always control how every one of those conversations go.
Sure.
But I know that we do really care about evidence-based outcomes, and so we're always charting them. How many people in career coaching actually got a job? We know how many people in our financial coaching saved and reduced debt, which is actually 95%. I'm pretty excited about that. And 95% can demonstrate that they can create a budget. So those are the kinds of things we like to document. But when all is said and done, I kind of agree with Father Gregory Boyle out at Homeboy Industries. I don't know if you've ever read or heard any of his. The main thing really is bringing people into an atmosphere where they can know they're cherished and that they are valued, and that we believe that they can be their best self with help. So
that's great. And with or without religious
right
forcing, I really appreciate that when it's not forced on them and they can be valued. So great. Thank you for your work.
Yes, Sarah Catlin again. What struck me when you first started speaking, I serve as the executive director at Access Arts School of Service, and I've been here a year, and a lot of times it feels like what I'm trying to do is find out what resources there are in the community, because I know you clearly have seen the need. We get siloed off where you have maybe 50 churches with amazing programming, volunteer-led programming, but sometimes you get duplication of work that doesn't need to be duplicated. If we were talking to each other, we could get so much more people help because we wouldn't be reinventing the wheel 50 times for the same, you know what I'm saying? So it's so
And that
lovely to
really
have.
was one of my pet
Mhm.
peeves, honestly, as a longtime social worker, and why I wanted to start this organization. So we actually have an information library on our website.
Yep.
It had over 250,000 views last year. And we try to have everything that that is going on in Columbia there. And that's, I know we actually have a part-time person, and that's all they do, is try to keep that up to date.
Yeah.
And so, because we don't want to duplicate, so I think, about 40 percent, 35 to 40% of the people that call us, we're able to direct them, somewhere else.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of people that called us, that's
Yeah.
over 3,000 requests. But we don't want to duplicate, and we also want to highlight what other places are doing. So and Access Arts, I hope to goodness, is on the information library, but please
We are.
go and look
Yeah, we are.
as
Yeah.
an activity for people to do. So our big project with our information library right now is, I'll back up. The most popular page on our information library is the weekly lower cost housing openings page. We update that every Monday, and almost everybody in town that has helping anybody in need uses that. And we get lots of, please don't ever stop doing this, emails. We have had to increase. We used to have no rentals at $1,000 was the limit. Well, obviously you couldn't have many on there now unless you'd raised it, but it's still the lower cost ones. But what we're really excited about right now is the career next steps part. We worked with Teresa Malidi and Cradle to Career in an opportunities subcommittee that identified through some work with the chamber and the Columbia Public Schools that there was no clearinghouse for employment opportunities in Columbia or ways to envision career paths. So we've kind of taken that on as our project. We haven't gotten funded for it, so it's just been, we're doing this as we can. But we, through the help of Randy Gooch with Columbia Public Schools and some other more experts in that field, we have identified 10 career paths, and we're building those out with where the certificates, apprenticeships, job options, and how do you pay for these things in about 10 different career paths. If you wait a week, we've really got the manufacturing one built out pretty well. We want to add videos, including more and more videos of particularly people of color who have succeeded in various fields. How do you actually get that $90 an hour plumber job? We have a handout that we created called Does Your Job Pay Enough? And it really shows the gap between certain professions and wages and how much housing costs in Columbia now. And so what does it take, and how can we help you? This year we helped 180, last year 180 people get jobs or better jobs. I would love to see us double that this year. It's something that we're very passionate about.
Sure. Sue or Herb Tillema, you have your hand up, and please unmute and let's hear what you have to say.
Unmute. Oh, you are unmuted. We are.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the finances of Columbia, Love Columbia? What is the present and expected next budget look like in terms of monetized expenditures? What are your revenue sources, at least as to type? And is there any difference forecast for the near future?
Well, our budget is grown. When we were first United Way funded in 2013, when they switched to the community impact model, they gave us $150,000, and that doubled our budget. Our budget is more in the $3 million range now. And we still, our primary source probably, and I have to look at what it all ended up shook out for last year, but I would say that's about 35% from government sources and the rest would be from private sources. So
A mix of grants and gifts and
right,
individual
So-
donations,
yes.
Como
Mhm.
gives and all that stuff.
Right, so we do, the government sources are, we have the contract with City of Columbia as of, this is our second year to provide financial coaching. And they are very pleased. That's one thing I think we do really well is financial coaching. And it's really helped. I always say now that we can say it's also credit building, because doesn't credit building sound so much nicer than budgeting?
Yeah.
People sign up more readily for that. But so the city provides funding for for part of our financial coaching. And then the county provides funding for our case management work with families with children, especially those who are housing unstable. So that's been a big help. That's through the Children's Trust Fund.
Uh-huh.
United Way has funded us since 2013. And they fund a part of our career coaching, part financial coaching. Well, I guess that's the main thing they would fund is those programs for us. So mainly in our coaching realm is what they fund for us. Which has been very helpful. We get some funding from the Missouri Housing Development Commission, and that's mainly through for some rental assistance and emergency hotels. Unfortunately, what was a lot of money during the pandemic is a trickle now. So we're even talking with we're working with Empower Missouri on some legislation to try to get more money put into the Missouri Housing Trust Fund. That's funded by a 3% property transfer fee or a $3 property transfer fee. And you can see that when you tie help for housing to property transfer fees, and then the real estate market isn't moving, you know, how that can impact that. But the first step would be to raise the $3 to $9. So that is going through but we need to look at some other ways to fund that. Just in 2024, we partnered with HUD for the first time on something they're trying called a youth homeless demonstration project. And that is, we are contracted to help 40 18 to 24-year-olds who are literally homeless. And they are providing enough money for rent for a year. And then we try to work with those individuals to stabilize their lives so that then they can take over their rent payment or be stable. Now, what we found out is this literally homeless 18 to 24-year-olds, nearly all of them are young people who have aged out of foster care. A lot of these kids don't know how to drive, you know, and over half of them are parents. So it's been quite a vulnerable population that we've spent a lot of time with this year. We're in our second year. We were pretty successful. We did 42% of the young people that got housed across the state through that program were through Love Columbia. So we've worked hard. We have good relationships with landlords. I mean, and so we're excited to work with that population. But again, most of our funding comes from individual donors, some local foundations, just other private funders. And so we're always just trying to, again, match resources with needs.
They've got two follow-up questions. I'll read you from the chat, and then there's someone with their hand up. Suzanne Opperman asked, the state government sources from the state of Missouri, she's just curious what department of the government those funds come from.
Missouri Housing Development Commission.
Okay, that was easy. Easy question, apparently. And then she also asks, are there any bills you know of that have been submitted so far that we can support for any of these programs, and we could contact our legislators and push them to?
You know, that is a really good question. And this one for the Missouri Housing Trust Fund is being written right now. We actually have one of our staff members working with Empower Missouri to write that. So I will let you know. Last year, we were really pushing for the legislation which passed for the land bank. And that's an entity that's kind of a place where you can temporarily put certain properties and sort of get them cleaned up and ready to use for affordable housing. It's
Yeah.
not hugely important in Columbia compared to other cities because we don't have as many vacant properties here, but it's still important. And working with Becky Thompson at the city, it's going to be important to have it. And so they're working on it, but we didn't even have the option to have one until the legislation passed. We're also real proponents of the clean slate legislation that provides automatic expungements for certain, mostly misdemeanors, but some felonies after the person has not had any other infractions for a certain period of time. And so if those could be automatically dropped rather than the person having to get an attorney and go through that whole thing, it's just important to get that off people's records for jobs, housing.
Yep.
What right now there's such a housing shortage, it's just very hard for someone with any barriers, gaps in their employment, past criminal record to find housing, certainly to find jobs. We're also very pleased that in Boone County now, we can petition to get a past eviction, the security raised on a past eviction if, and that's typically happens with the person has paid off the judgment. But it's still going to haunt you for the rest of your life, even if it was in, 2003. And again, that's difficult. So any of that type of legislature, I will try to get back to you more on what kind of housing policies. We have an affordable housing coalition that meets at Love Columbia on the third Tuesday at 3 o'clock. I would like to invite anyone to come. We started this informally after got a bunch of people on a bus trip up to Kansas City to visit Eileen's place, a low-income housing complex that had some innovative ideas. And we just started meeting. This was fall of 2021. The Boone County Upward Mobility Initiative asked if we could merge with their affordable housing work group, which we've done, and it's been great. And so we've looked at educating the community on various issues, everything from manufactured homes to inclusive zoning to streamlining, procedures to I don't even know what all, but Diane Schuler, maybe some of you know Diane,
You
retired
bet.
professor. She's been my right-hand person who's done so much of the research. She's in Jamaica right now on a Peace Corps. She's such a bold, wonderful lady, but she'll be back in July. So we've done a lot of educational presentations, and then just also tried to look at what we could tweak, what's the low-hanging fruit in Columbia. Adrian Stolwick helped us make a proposal to change the accessory dwelling unit sections of the UDC, non-conforming lots. So we looked at low-hanging fruit, and we've made a lot of suggestions, just looking at what's happened in other cities and what they've done. The thing I'm excited about for now is we do have the results of the housing study with Dr. Boston. And then I think there's some real priorities being made by the city and the county to prioritize. I really want to focus on how our city's funding their housing trust funds. We now have one with $1 million in it. That's not going to do much. We will need to find other ways to fund it. And then we'll need to also look at how is the money being spent well. So Becky Thompson, again, new person directing our housing department, very much wants the input of the community, stakeholders together. Just had a meeting with the executive officer of Columbia Home Builders Association, because we really have to get all of the stakeholders at the table in order to come up with the compromises and the plans that, we can really do something for the community.
Yeah, I'm also fairly active in the Chamber of Commerce, and I know everywhere I go, whether it's a political meeting, a politician giving a stump speech, chamber stuff, that how I hear housing, right?
Yes.
Everyone's talking about it. It's a crisis. It has been. I don't know why it took this long for people to start paying attention, but it's definitely a crisis that if you don't have housing, as you know, as you've already said, none of the other things can happen.
Right. My favorite line out of all this that I've read is the governor of Michigan, whose cry in Michigan is 3 words: build, baby, build. She just keeps saying it.
Yeah.
So we need, what is it? I think 37,000 homes by 2050. I mean, 33% of the people who work in Boone County don't live here. Now, some of that's by choice, but some of it's they can't afford to live here. They can't find any place to live.
Yeah.
Wow.
Kathy, you've been so patient. You've had your hand up for like 20 minutes. You want to ask your question?
Well, I had to meet with the workers that are here, but so I may have missed this, but one of my questions was, what was in the space where the fourplex is going to be built? What was
And the
there, or what
10-plex,
is there?
it's a
The
vacant
10-plex,
lot.
yes.
It's a vacant
Okay.
lot, the corner of Ash and College.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I know that lot.
very good. Okay,
Yeah.
and then my other question was, and again, I may have missed, how do you interface with the Central Missouri Community Action?
Well, we love them. Darren Priest was just emailing me over the weekend because they've got a couple of houses, the 2-bedroom houses on Hickman, and we're just brainstorming about how to make those very appealing to people that are coming to our home buyer class this Saturday. So we try again to do a lot of the same work and not duplicate.
Right.
They give a big focus on Head Start families, and so some of those families then go through some of our programs. We actually have someone from the Women's Business Center she's part-time there, but she's gone through all our coaching, is kind of a self-made person, and she's teaching growth mindset classes here. So we interface a lot, even with just staff, but programming as well.
That sounds wonderful.
I
Yeah,
have a quick question, Jane. Where does the Affordable Housing Group meet on the 3rd Tuesday at 3 p.m.?
here at Love Columbia.
Okay, and my second comment is Diane Suler was secretary of this group until she
Oh,
left
she
for the
was.
Peace Corps. So
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah,
We all smiled when you said her name.
Oh my gosh. Isn't
Sue,
she
is
amazing?
your hand up or her?
Yes, it is. It's mine. Okay, what I was just gonna say, I've been at city council meetings when, the male homeless that are on the street, they're almost all males. Right offhand, I can think of 2 females, but
Mhm.
it's what you see is the males. And I've been in a city council meeting when they've gone on and on about we've got to solve the homeless. You are solving the homeless more than what we do for the few that are on the street that tend to be men. And I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It's really got to be work all along the pipeline. And even the fact that we're working with Anderson Homes Foundation on this project to do starter homes. If somebody moves out of a rental into a starter home, it's going to open up a rental for somebody else. And so we really all, need to do that work. I will say, probably I think 2/3 of our clients are women, and maybe be higher than that. I don't know why, but the women seem to gravitate more toward getting coaching. But we did partner with, I wanted to do a fatherhood program for years and just didn't have the wherewithal or the, easy curriculum to latch onto, and then met a wonderful woman named Dr. Jennifer Baker from Springfield with Good Dads. And so it is a program that's really beautifully done, 16 weeks to help disconnected dads not only maybe get on track to pay their child support, but they get a personal liaison with child support enforcement, but also learn about communication with their kids, just how to understand developmental stages. So we had the privilege of bringing them to Columbia, and they get space at a very discounted rate over in the Victorian House. We call it the Yellow House across our parking lot, and we're hosting their programs and really pushing that. So if you're hearing anything about Good Dads, it's a
Was that our guest last week, guys?
That's
Right?
exactly who we had on last week. Yes,
Okay, you
indeed.
had
It was-
DeMarcus?
Yes,
Oh,
DeMarcus
passionate guy, yeah.
and
So,
Reverend Jackman.
yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yes, Julian
The 2 of them.
Jackman. He's their caseworker. So I met Jennifer. I just we've done everything we can do to roll out the red carpet and bring them
Yeah.
here. I'm only on one board besides working at Love Columbia, and it's Good Dads. Because
Yeah.
I just think it's so important. As you
Yeah.
said, men often feel like there's no one listening to them,
Mm.
and no one supporting them, and this is a really great way to do it.
Yeah, that was really fascinating last week. That was a really good meeting. I think we all were surprised and learned a lot. Like when you come, we kind of know what Love Columbia does. I
Yeah.
think all of us are blown out of the water last week.
It's
Like,
Good
yeah,
Dads.
David
Well,
Robinson's making a face like we had no idea about
and
that one.
just to brag about DeMarcus, I mean, he did leave another organization, but I recruited him to be trained as a group leader. And Jennifer Baker, the founder of Good Dads, was pretty dazzled by DeMarcus, so she recruited him to be the
Yeah.
regional director. So that's been good too. But the state legislature has funded them to spread Good Dads across the state. And
Right.
that's really how DeMarcus is here. And that was new. And really, we actually went with Jennifer to basically lobby last year to promote them. I said, gosh, I've never done that for Love Columbia, but I'm learning, and it was a great learning experience for us from
Sure.
Love Columbia to go to the Capitol
Yeah.
and be talking with some of our representatives, and it's who cannot want fathers to get more involved. It
Right.
was a pretty easy sell.
I've got a quick one from the chat. Nancy Copenhaver asks, do you have any pro bono help from any local attorneys?
A little bit. And that's one, I do have one attorney who's retiring. One thing that I've needed some pro bono help for is tangled titles, which is a whole black land loss issue.
Yeah.
And so that's been a little bit of help with that. But what I'll tell you, I really want to go into this year, and I don't know if my one guy, I can get him to do it all, but I want to do estate planning for all the people that go through our home buyer class and for any of our homeowners, because then we can avoid all this tangled title issue. And just so that is not done and that's not available. So if anybody out there would like to beat that bandwagon or help me find some volunteers, there's some pretty simple things you can do and some trainings we could have and some forms. I think is it beneficiary deed, whatever you put on your,
Yes.
this is not my field.
Right, to secure that generational wealth so it
Yeah,
doesn't
so
evaporate
I'm very
when someone
adamant that
dies.
we move in that direction. What really got me going on, it took us over a year to become HUD housing counseling certified. So many hoops when you work with HUD. It felt like a hood over my head. But anyway, but what I saw from the data from the first upward mobility data walk was only 3% of Boone County homeowners are African American when it's 15% of our population.
Right.
So I will say that of the 69 people that went through our HUD certified program, we actually did more training. 30 became homeowners last year. It was a miracle every story. I think it was close to 60% were African American. So that was a real joy to me.
Alice, I see that your hand is up.
I hope this isn't an inappropriate question, but have you ever tried to bring in some of the moms people to talk to your clients about gun safety issues? If you do own a gun, maybe these people can't afford it, but letting them know about safe storage, keeping them away from kids, things like that. Have you ever thought to do that? Because I know the African American population, particularly women, for good reasons, want to have guns to protect themselves. So I'm just sort of putting that bug in there.
You know, we were part of a group that Missouri Foundation for Health was doing some planning meetings. I think that came up this year. But you know what? That is an amazing idea for an educational program. Thanks for that idea. We have Healthy Homes and Tables. We call it, well, I think we shortened it to Healthy Homes. When this was 3 years ago, we interviewed 25 moms who were either experiencing homelessness or had just been housed, and asked them what their needs were. And we never like to presume, we know what people's needs are. And surprisingly, they said strengthening their families and providing activities they could do with their families, that was listed higher than getting housed. It was very surprising. So we started doing, providing monthly activity kits, our version of those kind of expensive things that you can buy for your kids or grandkids where you have activities to do at home.
Sure.
And then we started doing monthly events. So at these monthly events, we've had everything from mental health oriented to organizing your kitchen to making healthy pizzas to whatever. But we definitely could put that in as one of our topics.
And I'm sorry I actually didn't bring it up to Marcus, but maybe I'll try to email him for the dads group. You know, I mean,
I think it should.
I mean, even when your children go spend the night at someone else's,
Yeah.
do they know about safe gun storage? Because I just know that this population, for good reason, feel like they need to invest in guns. So, anyway, thank you.
But you know what? We should just develop a handout about safe gun storage and just have it here. We're readily passing it out.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, honestly, the things that come to our attention, several years ago, we had 3 single moms, and this couldn't necessarily be a single mom thing. They just happened to be, all blew up their cars because they didn't realize when the oil light went on, that was a problem. So we made a handout. We passed out for 3 years, I think. Check your oil. Notice the oil light, and we raised money for vouchers for oil changes.
When you're poor and your car's a beater, there's lights up on the dash all the time. And
exactly.
My low tire light's been coming off and on ever since it got cold.
I know.
I go wear my tires every time.
Just to know that one light is super important.
Yeah, that's one you don't ignore, but they don't know.
No, and so we do have car maintenance classes now.
That's
too.
great, Jane. We all need that, especially us single ladies. Jane, reach out to moms. They have a website, Kristen Bowen, and others. They probably already have that handout for you, because the safe storage issue is a real safe issue to bring up in terms of guns. Also a very important issue. Our legislators try to bring it up to strengthen those laws. They probably have that handout for you. So,
okay,
right. And you would just hand it out when you recreate it. I see our president is trying to break in. We are at time. You've been so generous.
Yes. I want to thank
hour.
you, Sarah, and I definitely want to thank our guest, Jane Williams, today. Of course, I've always known about the work of love. I just didn't know how diversified your operation and really successful. It's the amount of money growth. Just that is enough to impress us all and to hope that you're showing us the way here. So everyone, thank Jane for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for what you do. And come on Tuesday, the 21st is our next meeting if you're free at 3 o'clock. And please email me any of these great ideas. I've already felt like I was enriched by just your questions. So thank you, and your suggestions. Thank you for having me.
Our organization is in constant contact with our government representatives. So if there's anything we can do in that case,
well, I will
remember us.
We've got some great representatives, don't we?
I think they're in contact with you directly, but if there's any pressures we can bring, let us know.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Jane,
you.
would you
Everyone else?
Jane, would you give us your email, please?
Yes, Jane W at lovecolumbia.org. So that's JANEW at lovecolumbia.org.
Thank you.
And
I'd love to hear from you. I can't do a lot of like knitting or gardening, but I can read your emails.
And because I probably missed it in your introduction, your title or your board member and what else?
Executive Director.
Executive Director. Okay, that's it. Well, we're very honored that you were with us today.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Let's have
Thank
a
you, Jane.
short business meeting.